Welcome to this second instalment of me, a classical music lover, rediscovering the rock and pop I used to love in an epic voyage to discover Dad Rock's greatest album ever. Part 2, and it's the big boys, the fab, you know how many. That means I've marked every Beatles song on every Beatles album to find out which is their greatest. So, come with me on this journey through 13 Beatles albums, which means in last place.
In the town where
What a surprise, it's a film track album, really a good sign, you know. It's not even a Beatles film, really. It's a Beatles cartoon. I mean, I can just picture the band meeting.
It's an animation, it's great. It means you don't need to do any filming at all.
Oh, he's right, you know.
We can do bugger all, great.
It's a half-baked album, actually only half an album, as the other half is George Martin doing orchestral stuff. I'm supposed to be switching it up here, and I'm back with classical music. No, I'm not marking this one. This is now a top 12.
close your eyes and I'll kiss you.
Great cover, boys. Album itself, it's their second album and a bit less impressive. It's basically a retread of album number 1. The first album, Please Please Me, was 8 Lennon and McCartney tracks and 6 cover versions. What did the Beatles do for album number 2? Rinse and repeat. It's still good, but I've got to admit it's getting better, because at number 11 comes
Last night I said these words to my.
It's their first album recorded in a single 10-hour session. I've got to say I feel a little bit guilty about giving Please Please Me 5.64, but last week I gave Beethoven's String Quartet in C minor a lower ranking, so here's me clutching my pearls. Next! Everything happens so fast with the Beatles. This album is 20 months since the release of Please Please Me, and the Beatles are already on album number 4 after making Hard Day's Night, that's the album, and also Hard Day's Night the film, and Conquering America and touring the world. I think they might have been tired.
8 days a week is not enough to show I
But
care.
it's fascinating that in Beatlemania terms, we're really at the height of the story here. Beatles have achieved worldwide fame, number ones everywhere, America are screaming at their feet. This is the pop stars at their pinnacle. And yet, we're just at the beginning of our story, the musical story of the Beatles. Yes, the Beatles have conquered the world, but they still have a sonic universe to explore. And before leaving this album, I have to comment on that title, so cynical for one so young. I wonder, where does that cynicism come from? Step forward, no doubt, Mr. Lennon, the daddy, oldest Beatle, the one whose band the others joined when they were just kids. He was the first to get married, and that was before Please Please Me even. Clearly the more emotional Beatle, the sadder Beatle.
Oh dear, what can I do? I don't want to spoil the party, so I'll go. I'm a loser, and I'm feeling blue. Tell me.
John's not just complaining, he's opening himself up emotionally in his music, or at least starting to. If the Beatles are finding things hard, they're going to tell us about it.
It's been a hard day's night.
Yes, I know Hard Day's Night is technically another film tie-in, but this one's a bit different. This album is pointing forward, and you can hear that in the album's famous first chord. This isn't the world of She Loves You, yeah, yeah, yeah. This is John Lennon finding life hard, having to juggle being a rock star, married with a kid.
It's been a hard day's night, and I've been working like a dog.
The Beatles don't seem to be finding it hard. What a track this is. Beautifully recorded, even hearing it all these years later. Listen to those bongos. I'd never heard them before. Bongos! So why are the Beatles so good? Well, it's like you always get in culture. A combination of two things. The Who and the When. Not that The Who, but we will be returning to them soon. In this case, The Who are two separate geniuses, Lennon and McCartney, in the same band at the same time, once in a blue moon kind of thing. The When is the height of the 1960s, a cultural volcano, and the Beatles are there, right in the thick of it, just as pop music and the recording industry are really maturing. It's perfect timing, perfect zeitgeist. Next up,
Help, I need somebody.
can't help noticing with this album a more acoustic side to the Beatles, with a very Bob Dylan-esque You've Got to Hide Your Love Away.
Hey, you've got to hide your love away.
To these older ears, that's clearly Bob Dylan-esque, but also with the Simon and Garfunkel-esque I've Just Seen a Face. Well, I say Simon & Garfunkel-esque, but might be the other way around. And we can't go without mentioning another acoustic song, but probably one of the most famous in the world. With my older classical ears, it's rather obvious that's a string quartet playing in the background. Not just the generic strings I used to hear. People still make a fuss about this song, most re-recorded song ever, etc, etc. But after all these years, this single song does genuinely feel like the moment, if you had to find a single moment, when the Beatles start to become something more than just a great rock and roll band. Feels rather strange putting arguably one of the best albums ever made into 7th place, but number 1, this is the Beatles listening, and number 2, let's look at the numbers. It is an album that gets weaker as it goes on, and interestingly, I think this is about their last album to do so. From around this point on, the Beatles crafted their albums more as single works than musical compilations of songs, and thus started to care a lot more about how their albums finished. I mean, that crafting process is clearly happening already here on Rubber Soul, which is part of the reason it's such a great album. Hats off to Drive My Car. When I was a kid, I always struggled on guitar with this song. No surprise, it's complicated. It's based around a complicated riff. And it's got complicated harmonies.
I can show you a better time.
So much complexity masquerading as simplicity.
Beep, 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 yeah.
The Lennon-McCartney partnership is indeed fascinating. It has a yin-yang quality to it, with John offering that cooler, older brother, rebel energy, and Paul, the younger, more diligent whippersnapper. John, gloomy but pushing boundaries. Paul, optimistic but traditional.
You know, love-hate. Any strong relationship's got that in it, I think. It's a pity.
No doubt they also pushed each other competitively and learned from each other. I'm sure, for example, that John prevented Paul from being too uncool. Look what Paul got up to after the Beatles split up. Okay, that's acceptable, Paul, but not bagpipes. No, not bagpipes! Here's a plot twist. It's obviously wrong to say Magical Mystery Tour is a better album than Rubber Soul, or is it? Well, some people claim Rubber Soul as the greatest Beatles album ever. Surely nobody claims that about Magical Mystery Tour. It's a film compilation scraps album. Then hang on, some of those scraps.
Let me take you down Penny Lane. I am the Eggman. Fool on the hill. All you need is love.
Honestly, if I was washed up on a desert island with one of these two, I'd choose the album on the right. Okay, top 5. Excited rubbing of hands. White Album is a rag bag of an album. Kind of got everything in it. It's a grown-up Beatles album, an adult one. We've had all the fun and larking around of Sgt. Pepper and Fool on the Hill. And now we get the kind of gritty, grown-up Beatles sprouting everywhere with hair and beards. There's just so much on this album, you can't fit it on one record. So the Beatles didn't, releasing their first double album and spawning the ever-popular parlour game, Run from the Weirdo. Are you trying to get me demonetised? The ever-popular parlour game, make a single album out of the White Album. It would be a blinder of an album. I know I'm talking to Gen X and older here. The White Album feels a much more American album. It's got Happiness of a Warm Gun.
Nobody can do me no harm.
Rocky Raccoon.
Somewhere in the black mining hills of Dakota there live
Bungalow Bill.
Your American bullet-headed
Honey Pie.
of your Hollywood song.
It's crammed full. It's had everything thrown at it. The good,
Blackbird singing in the dead of
the bad,
Number 9.
and the ugly.
Don't make me cry, don't make me blue.
There's something garish and raw and rough and sarcastic about the White Album. Take Helter Skelter, a great song often cited as the genesis of heavy metal. Well, the genesis of Helter Skelter was McCartney reading about the band The Who, saying one of their tracks was the loudest, rawest and dirtiest the band had ever recorded. So McCartney thought they'd outdo The Who and make a heavier one, and they did. Put a pin in that one because I'll be returning to the hellscape of Helter Skelter very soon. But as I was saying, there's something argumentative, even snarky, about the White Album. A lot of the songs, in fact, were recorded separately. That's Beatles in separate rooms doing separate things. But you can also hear the arguments, courtesy of George, with While My Guitar Gently Weeps. I mean, listen to Clapton's guitar solo, grinding on and on and on. Also, is it just me, or is this song sped up sound like... Anyhow, a sarcastic album, sarcastic even against Beatles fans who overanalyzed Beatles lyrics.
I told you about the fool on the hill. I tell you, man, he's living there still.
Unfortunately, in California, there was one particular fool who overanalyzed Beatles lyrics, but who definitely didn't live alone. He had a family, you see, a cult family that called themselves The Family. His name was Charles Manson, a racist, mad cult leader with a small but insanely devoted following who would go out and commit at least 9 murders on his behalf. Manson was convinced that the Beatles were sending him messages about how to incite a race riot through their songs, and particularly through the White Album. This awful series of events ended up with the murder of Sharon Tate, actress and wife of film director Roman Polanski, along with others, including Tate's unborn child. She was more than 8 months pregnant at the time of her murder. And amongst all the murder and death, the words Helter Skelter, misspelt with blood on the fridge. Of course, the Beatles were not responsible for the events of Charles Manson, but it does make me think, rather weirdly perhaps, about the quality of the Beatles. What I mean is that Charles Manson could listen to a song like Helter Skelter, a song Paul McCartney was trying to make sound as nasty and hellish as possible, and could actually hear hell.
I got blisters on my fingers.
Okay, at number 4.
When I find myself in times of trouble.
Supposedly the Beatles' final album, but complicated history this one. It was recorded before Abbey Road, then lots of messy, complicated stuff happens that ends up with the Beatles splitting up. But before that happens, maybe helping things along that way, John Lennon hands over the tapes for Phil Spector to remix The Long and Winding Road. Now, Phil Spector has done some bad things, some of which he's actually been prosecuted for, but this mix, particularly of The Long and Winding Road, was a criminal thing for which he was never charged. It wasn't until I heard the anthology version of the song decades ago now that I realised how good a track it was, and how much it was the mushy strings and the choir that had always put me off. Strange, I know, for a supposed classical music lover.
Many times I've cried.
Before leaving Let It Be, the short song Dig It. Is it taking a dig, taking the mickey out of a certain Mickey?
Like the FBI and the CIA.
Okay, next. Once more, I must manfully clutch my pearls and beg penance from the musical gods for recording Revolver 3rd place. But look, I'm just following the numbers, boss. Revolver has always been a top 3 Beatles album for me. Sometimes it was actually my favourite album. Now I'm older, this feels like a fair place. It is an amazing album, oozing inventiveness and quality all over. It's the first time the Beatles really take full creative control of their future. And George Harrison is also getting into his own on this album. He's actually got 3 tracks on it, all of which can stand next to the McCartney-Lennon numbers and not be ashamed. Patronising pat on the back for George. Sidebar on George Harrison, we see one of my issues with him musically is he has a slight thing for, how should I put it, monotony?
When you're here,
Droning?
when you see beyond yourself, then you may find peace of mind.
Repetitious? But on this album, George conquers the monotony thing by cementing it to an Indian thing with monotonous potential and managing to create something completely new. Wonderful album, all the Beatles firing creatively. However, at number 2, we have the greatest album ever made.
When I get older, losing my head.
gone a little bit out of fashion recently, this album, which for years topped most lists as the Mona Lisa of rock and pop albums. Sometimes considered as the first concept album, it does actually possess a very simple concept. A band performing a concert, the band Sgt. Pepper's. And next comes on Billy Shears, aka Ringo Starr.
What would you think if I sang out a tune?
Then just add whatever more songs you want to before you put a bit of the end of the concert at the end of the album. Concept album done. Listening to it all these years later, it does still sound buoyant and fresh and full of creative but channeled energy. And it's funny. I mean, it's 1967. The Beatles are widely considered the world's greatest band, and the whole world is watching and waiting to see what they're going to produce next. And they come out with this parody of an old band that's out of fashion. The Beatles out of fashion in 1967. What the kids today would call meta. One of the interesting things listening to these albums in order all these years later is tracking the Lennon-McCartney relationship. Generally, it's a process of watching Paul rise and rise up to John's level. But this feels like the album when McCartney surpasses Lennon for the first time. Paul has the bulk of the tracks, at least, and Lennon knows it. John at this time is depressed, with his wife, Cynthia, and a kid waiting for him in suburbia, but with Yoko Ono prowling in the wings. You get a sense of that suburban boredom in Good Morning. Rather too strongly, if you ask me. The song verges on being a bit boring.
Good morning, girl.
Lennon, I think, was chafing more and more at Paul's growing importance in the band, but he lacked the energy to match him. He would react more and more to McCartney's historical pastiches, what he would soon call Paul's granny music shite. All these years later, when I'm 64, still sounds whimsical and nostalgic, but it hasn't dated, particularly set in an album that celebrates the whimsy and nostalgic. And John can't leave the album without being John Lennon.
I read the news today, oh boy.
Day in the Life is, of course, the classic John Lennon-Paul McCartney track Split. Most of the song written by Lennon, but with the jolly McCartney middle bit.
Woke up, fell out of bed, dragged a comb across my head.
And by the way, this album has my fave Gloomy John Jolly Paul identifier. Paul singing,
To admit it's getting better.
and Lennon filling in. Perfect. Which brings us finally to number one, and guess what? It's
Come together.
strange that such a smooth, slick album was produced at a time of greatest stress for the band. Paul on this album is firing on all cylinders, totally Beatles keen, and the others, well, George is firing creatively, but he's not happy with his lack of creative space in the band. And John, I mean, check this last interview the pair did before they split up in 1968.
Do you ever envision a time of just ceasing being the Beatles and going off on your own, or even working together?
We do work on our own anyway now.
You never can be anything else but the Beatles.
The Beatles, that's what we are.
Did you miss that? John and Paul are actually saying different things. Listen again.
Going off on your own, or even working together.
We do work on our own anyway now.
You never can be anything else but the Beatles.
The Beatles, that's what we are.
Anyway, hats off to George here. As I said earlier, fundamental to understand the Beatles is the presence of two separate geniuses in the same band, once in a blue moon event, blah, 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 blah. However, I'm sorry, but there's just no mathematical way you can have three geniuses in the same band. Not happening. Sorry, George. And yet, here we are, at the end of the Beatles. This is their greatest album, and George is producing the best tracks? What does that say? I've no idea. Maybe if I sat next to John Lennon and Paul McCartney for a decade, I could write a couple of number ones myself. You can but hope. Even so, you've got to congratulate George himself, coming up with not one but two brilliant songs that more than hold their own, whether by osmosis, learning and hard work, awakening creativity, increasing confidence, a strong back catalogue, luck, or some kind of combination of all of these. George on this album out-Beatles the Beatles themselves, and it's a sight to hear.
It's alright.
So, best Beatles album, Abbey Road. But does that make it best album of all time? That is a different question. The list builds up. Next up, Pink Floyd. Oh, and like and subscribe. Thank you.
Hope you enjoyed the show.
Rock on, dads.